You are standing in front of your closet right now, or you will be sometime today, and without thinking about it, you will make a choice that every human on the planet makes every single morning. You will put something on your body. But here is the thing nobody ever tells you. The reason you do that has almost nothing to do with being cold. For most of recorded history, the answer seemed obvious. Humans wear clothes to stay warm, to protect skin from the sun and the rain and the thorns. A practical solution to a practical problem. Simple, logical, completely wrong. The real reason your ancestors started covering their bodies is stranger, darker, and more deeply human than anything a survival manual would ever tell you. And once you understand it, you will never look at what you are wearing the same way again. Let's go back, way back. Around 170,000 years ago, a small population of early Homo sapiens was living through one of the worst climate events in human prehistory, a period of intense cold and drought that researchers now call the bottleneck. The human population may have dropped to just a few thousand individuals. The species nearly disappeared, and during this period, something shifted. Something that would change the course of human history more than fire, more than agriculture, more than the wheel. Humans started wearing things on their bodies. Now, the first instinct is to say, of course they did. It was cold. But here is where the science gets interesting. The oldest physical evidence of clothing, preserved fibers, and dyed flax dates to around 36,000 years ago, but genetic research tells a completely different story. In 2011, a study led by researcher Mark Stoneking at the Max Planck Institute used an unexpected method to date the origin of clothing. He studied lice. Specifically, he studied the point at which body lice, which live in clothing, genetically diverged from head lice, which live in hair. The split happened approximately 170,000 years ago, matching almost exactly the period of the bottleneck. So early humans were wearing something long before the Ice Age that most people assume drove the behavior. Which means the cold was not the trigger, something else was. To understand what that something else might be, you have to understand what was happening to the human body during this same period. Around 1.2 million years ago, the evolutionary ancestors of modern humans began losing body hair at a remarkable rate. This is unusual. Nearly every other large mammal on Earth kept its fur, but early humans shed it, and for decades, scientists debated why. The leading theory today is the one developed most rigorously by evolutionary biologist Mark Pagel and anthropologist Walter Bodmer. Their research suggests that losing body hair was a defense against external parasites. Ticks, lice, fleas, and the deadly pathogens they carry were a far greater threat to early humans than the cold. Bare skin made those parasites visible, detectable, removable. And in a species that lived in close social groups, the ability to scan a group member's body for parasites was a survival advantage. Bare skin was a form of honest signaling. It said, I am clean, I am healthy, I am safe to be near. Now, here is the twist. The moment humans started covering their bodies, they undid that signal. Clothing hid the skin, and that changed everything about how humans communicated trust, status, and identity to one another. Think about what clothing actually does at its most fundamental level. It covers, it conceals, it creates a surface that replaces the honest biological information the skin used to communicate. And almost immediately, humans began using that surface to send different information entirely. Not biological information, social information. Archaeological evidence from burial sites across Europe and Asia shows that by 30,000 years ago, clothing was already functioning as a status marker. The oldest known sewing needles, carved from bone and found in Siberia, date to around 50,000 years ago. The stitching they enabled was not crude. Researchers studying sites like Sungir in Russia found burial remains where individuals were dressed in garments decorated with thousands of hand-drilled mammoth ivory beads. The beads alone would have taken an estimated 10,000 hours of labor to produce. That is not survival. That is theater. That is identity. That is someone saying, without speaking a single word, "Look at what I am worth." Anthropologist Daniel Miller who spent decades studying the relationship between humans and material objects, argued that clothing is one of the primary ways humans externalize the self. The body, he wrote, is too unstable, too temporary, too biological to hold meaning on its own, so humans reach for objects. They drape meaning over the body. They turn the surface of the self into a message. And here is what makes that idea so unsettling. It means that clothing was never really about temperature. From the very beginning, it was about communication, about control, about the terrifying human need to be perceived a certain way by other humans. Consider what happens every morning when you open that closet. You are not just choosing warmth. You are choosing who you want to be seen as today. You are making a decision about how much of yourself to reveal and how much to conceal. You are constructing a version of yourself out of fabric and color and cut and brand. And you are doing it because somewhere in the ancient circuitry of your brain, you understand that other humans are reading you constantly, the way your ancestors once read the bare skin of a group member for signs of health and trustworthiness. The surface has changed, the reading has not. This explains a behavior that otherwise makes almost no biological sense. In nearly every documented human society, clothing is not worn for warmth alone. Even in extremely hot climates, the Sahara, the Arabian Peninsula, the Australian outback, humans wear garments. Complex, layered, sometimes heavy garments. Garments that trap heat rather than release it. And in those same cultures, the specific forms of those garments are tied with extraordinary precision to identity, to tribe, to class, to gender, to spiritual status, to moral standing. Researcher Joanna Eicher, who built one of the most comprehensive cross-cultural databases of dress and adornment in history, found that no known human society goes without some form of body modification or covering. Even the cultures once described by Western explorers as naked were not actually unadorned. They were painted, scarified, tattooed, pierced. The specific form of the adornment varied. The impulse to cover and signal never did. So what was the real reason humans started wearing clothes? The cold gave them the opportunity. But the reason was the same reason humans do almost everything that separates them from every other species on Earth. Other humans were watching, and what those other humans thought mattered more than almost anything else. Your ancestors did not reach for fur because they were freezing. They reached for it because they understood instinctively that the body alone was not enough. That to survive in a social species, you had to manage how you appeared. You had to control the message. You had to turn yourself into something that could be read correctly by the tribe. Every morning, when you stand in front of that closet, you are doing exactly the same thing. Not surviving the cold, surviving each other.